Hello, all, and welcome to the Movie Bears podcast. I'm Brett Harris, and along with my wonderful co-hosts, we get together now and then when we can, usually once a week or so. Although we're just coming off of a bye week with Jim and Will. We're traveling, but we're excited to be back and jump back into the movie watching and reviewing saddle with you fine folks. We're going to be talking about not one, but two movies this week, those being Toy Story 4, the newest installment in the Toy Story franchise, and Child's Play, a reboot of the Child's Play franchise from the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s. Will, you're making some fun stabbing motions.
Those aren't stabs.
Oh no, you're jerking it.
I could. You know what? This is a choose your own adventure. You see what you as viewers can see what you want to see here.
Depends what's in your hand.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Well, before we jump into our movies, we got a couple of things we're going to talk about. But before we even do that, let me introduce my wonderful co-host. Jim Pugliafico is here with us. Welcome back to the show, babe. How are you?
I am here. Thanks. It feels great to be back after a couple of weeks. So we got two movies stacked up to talk about. Fortunately, both of them are thematically tied together around the theme of toys. So this ought to be interesting. Yeah, let's see what the toys do.
Which one executed the theme better? We'll have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see which one. Yeah.
And will it... What?
No, I was to say which friendly toys made the biggest impact.
Which one's going on the collector shelf and which one's going in the trash heap?
Right.
Oh boy. All right. Well, Will Lindis is here with us as well. Welcome, Will. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Brad. Jim, first of all, it's great to be back after having that bye week. Like, it was great to be away for the reasons that I was away. There was a work trip and a visit to actually former co-host and voice of the Movie Bears podcast, Chris Lopez. I was visiting him and his husband, Jason, and just several of our friends up in the Chicago area. Had an absolute blast. Caught every single one of the Pokemon in the city. So apologies to Chicago. But as much fun as that was, this is one of those things that I look forward to every week, getting together with the two of you and gabbing about movies. So I'm glad we're diving back in.
Well, I'm glad that you're glad.
It sounds like that there was a lot of Pokemoning going on. And I don't know. I mean, we're probably fortunate to get two movies to fit in there.
First of all, I'm glad that you're glad that I'm glad, Brad. And I'm glad, Brad. But yeah, it was Pokemon Go Fest in Chicago.
Yeah.
So everyone, a bunch of people from out of town were visiting as well. And we spent the entire Sunday walking up and down the park. Easily, I don't know, 10 kilometers walk that day.
I bet. Well, that's awesome that you were able to have that experience. Definitely glad you're back. Glad that, Jim, you're back from your sojourn across the pond. Your continent jumping.
That was a work trip. Yeah.
Not quite as fun, maybe, as
probably not. Probably not. But I found some room for some sightseeing, so that was good.
Yeah, that's great.
Visiting another country is an experience, always an experience. So, yeah. So, Israel was interesting.
Oh my gosh, I bet. And it also makes you, I'm sure, very glad to be back home too, because it's one of those things where you're away from home, you're seeing the sights, you're on this grand tour, and the whole time you're thinking like, man, I got to get back to my husband, my pets, and my own bed.
It's something I hadn't realized. Like it's almost like the further away you are, the feelings of home are stronger. Only mostly having just trips within the US, it's not, I mean, it sucks sometimes being away from home, but when you're like thousands and thousands of, 3 times as far away from home, it does feel, the pull or the tug of home is stronger.
Thank goodness for FaceTime twice a day, because we hadn't had that. might have been a little unmanageable for me. I didn't go anywhere. I was here holding down the fort with the cats, but we sure are glad to have you home, babe. So, and I'm glad to be back on the show with both of you. We did have a bye week last week, and last week was kind of like the height of Pride Month in some ways. There were a lot of Pride events happening. For those of you watching the show, you may see I'm wearing my Rainbow Mickey ears. We would be remiss if we did not wish all of you out there in listener land a very happy Pride from the Movie Bears podcast.
Mm-hmm. Hope your Pride Month was full of celebration and with friends, family, however you celebrate Pride Month.
Yeah, this is a month to appreciate where we're at. I mean, we've seen the commercialization of the rainbow flag kind of slapped on everything, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's great to know that my marketing dollars are valued. But this is also a good month to look, not just at those things, but to look at the people left and right of us, the people in our lives who we love, and also think about the road that it took for us to get here. We've gone through as a community, as several communities, a lot of shit just to get to where we're at today. And we've still got a lot of work left to do. So Pride Month is about celebration. It's also about, as much as it's about looking into the past, it's about looking to the future and about how we can make it even better for the next generation.
Indeed. Well said. And Will, you might like this. On lunch break today, I fired up Spider-Man on the PS4 for the first time in a while, and I made a sojourn to the big rainbow wall in the gay part of
yes. I love this, Brad. Did you take a spider selfie?
I did take a spider selfie.
Yes!
I had to. I couldn't resist. You know it.
Oh, that is perfect. If that's not your timeline photo on Facebook, that should be your timeline photo on Facebook.
Maybe I'll switch it.
Yeah.
I'll switch it. All right. Well, we got 2 movies to discuss, but we got one more thing we want to do before we do that. We've had some comments from listeners coming in over the last few months. It's been a little while since we've done a mail grab bag sort of thing, and so we've gotten a few comments that we want to share with you folks from people that have written in through a variety of means. Some people through our website, some text, even some people on Growler, which just boggles my mind when someone on Growler is randomly like, oh my God, you listen to the show. Like, this is so awesome. But we've got 3 comments we're going to share, and I'll go ahead and go first with a comment from James from Austin, Texas, who says, just want to let you all know I'm behind on my queues of things to watch, but I watch the Movie Bears podcast first, above Fear the Walking Dead even, and I'm a huge fan. He says Movie Bears podcast is must-see and needed movie critic viewing. So, James, what an honor to, I'm not going to say Trump, but what an honor to leapfrog the other things in your queue and be at the head of your must-watch list. It's a real honor that you tune in every week, and thank you for supporting the show.
And with our connections to Austin, I'm just wondering if we've met this James. I mean, it's great to hear that he puts us, far ahead some of his other favorites. But yeah, I mean, it's always great to hear from people who listen to the show. I have a quick story to talk about about somebody else who listened to the show that I got to meet this week that I think Will knows. But yeah, so James is somebody that I don't know if we've met. Maybe Will knows. I don't know.
We haven't met him in person yet, and I know he hasn't met you in person yet, Will.
Yeah.
We're talking about maybe like a meetup or something when we're in Austin for South by.
For sure.
Well, indeed.
Hello from possibly down the street, James.
We need to plan one for the next time we're in Austin, whether it be for the next South by or Fantastic Fest or something. We should just have a little meetup somewhere. Have a burger and beer and
maybe
hang out.
I don't know. It adds to the travel. We can talk, but maybe adding an extra day before or after and doing either a pre-festival or post-festival, local listener bear get together or whatever type thing.
That would be fun. I always feel like that's a little self pat yourself on the back too much. But someone told me that that's stupid and not to think that way and just do fun stuff. So maybe we should break that seal.
Lean into the fun. The people that think it's stupid won't show up, and that's okay. The people that enjoy it will, and that'll be great. And it doesn't have to be like a big to-do. It could be, let's go to a place where they have drinks, or go to a place where they have some good barbecue and open seating, and just
a gathering of friends. Right?
We'll be there between 7 and 9. If you happen to be in the area, come be by between 7 and 9 as well, or something like that.
Good barbecue. I'm sold. All right, we're gonna do it.
Bears and barbecue.
Oh, they go hand in hand. Let's just hope they use the moist towelettes afterward. Anyway, we got a couple other comments. We're gonna go to Jim for the next one. Jim, who did you hear from?
Well, we heard from someone on Growler, of all places, and another one, I think, right, from the Growler app. This person is Luff from Reykjavik. So we're talking like from a long ways away. And he says it's a bit harder to keep up with some of the movies that you gents chat about here, but love that you give non-spoiler previews. Helps me decide what to look out for and what to maybe pass on. Thanks. So we got somebody from Iceland, man, like listening to the show. That's interesting and great to hear that, we've got, even if we don't have very deep reach, we've got a very far reach, right? And bears are everywhere. All right, we'll do it. We'll do a meetup in Austin and a meetup in Iceland. How about that?
Okay. And let's just, Jim, just to be on the safe side, let's not schedule them for the same weekend. Let's just space them out a little bit.
Yeah, we'll space them out a little bit. I'll use the frequent flyer miles. We'll get there. But hey, Luff, all kidding aside, thanks again for commenting on the show. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the comments we get, whether they be suggestions or praise like yours, or even tell us what you don't like. Maybe we can fix some things, but we do like hearing from people who listen to the show. So thank you again for taking the time to send us a note, even if it was while you were cruising Growler.
I mean, that's the best time. Like if you're cruising Growler and you're thinking about whatever you might be thinking about while cruising Growler, and you stop and think like, man, I want to say hi to the movie bears. Like, I'm flattered. We should be flattered.
Right. Rather than it being like private pictures have been unlocked, it's like thoughts about your podcast. Here you go. Right. Well, Luff, thank you so much. So great to hear from you. Will, go ahead and close this out. What have you got?
Absolutely. So we have a note here from Trey from Oakland, California, who writes, I can't believe you guys have been doing this for like 7 years already. Blows my mind that I have never missed a week of your show in that time. Can we get a Founders Club, decoder rings, or something like that? And first of all, Trey, wow, it blows my mind too to think about that. Like when you think about like what percentage of our lives have been spent doing this show, it's not an insignificant number. And it's been fun all the way through. But wow, never missed an episode. Yeah, we need to figure out something. We need a Bear One Year One special patch or sticker or emblem, for someone that's been around since the beginning. So I don't know what that is going to be, but thank you for being with us, Trey.
Yeah, we'll have to put our heads together on that. But God, 7 years. It blows his mind. It blows our minds too. Every time, especially we have one of our annual, anniversary shows, right? And we're like, oh my God, it's been that long. We've been doing the show. And when I'm putting the shows together and editing the shows, and I'm looking at the episode number, and we're on like
328. This episode.
Something 300, 300, and I'm like, that's crazy. So, wow, it is humbling to hear that someone's been listening to us for 7 years. That's and never missed a week of the show. We've missed weeks and he hasn't.
I'm about to say you've probably listened to more episodes than we have.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Well, people keep asking for merch. Maybe this is the thing that like needs to push us over the line. Maybe we can put something
Get some sort of patch, some sort of Like, I don't know, put our logo on a hat, put our logo on a shirt, a mug. I don't know. What do people want? What would people want? I guess that's a question for listeners. What do people want?
Yeah, don't ask Jim, because he'll tell you not coffee mugs.
Yeah, bottles of lube are so cliche at this point. So we could come up with something.
Branded cum rags.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
He said a decoder ring. It could be a different kind of ring.
This is taking a turn.
This did not. You know what? I was gonna say this went to places I wasn't expecting it, but like, come on, real talk. We knew it was gonna go here. It always goes here.
Oh boy. Well,
Yikes.
Trey, thank you so much for writing it as well. And man, being with us for the whole going on 7 years, I think in December, right? If my math is correct. Trey may be right.
December 2012. Yeah.
Oof, wow. Well, if you're not tired of hearing our voices yet, hopefully you won't ever get to that point. But thanks so much, Trey. Jim, you mentioned you had a story. Would love to hear about this.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to pull up a name real quick, Will, but it just by chance yesterday, a friend of Brad and I who lives in Dallas now was here in Phoenix and not with us, but he was visiting friends in Phoenix.
Yes.
On his way back, got stranded in the Tucson airport, and I heard from him. He's like, "What's there to do in Tucson for like 7 hours?" I'm like, "I don't know." I said, "Not much for 7 hours in the middle of a Monday, but we can meet for lunch and hang out." So met for lunch, and I met a new friend. His name is Jonathan. He's from, I think he lives in Dallas. I think he's a film professor or a film studies professor.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Right. And
did you forget to mention that he's super cute, Jim? Because that's also true.
Right. He is very cute bear, very friendly. And we had amazing lunch. I made a new friend. We talked about film. It was pretty awesome. And Will, he mentioned knowing you. So I'm like, that's great. I mean, like it was like kismet or something. It was fantastic.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan and David, nice guys.
Yeah, I didn't get to meet David, but just Jonathan this time. So, and he says, I forget what he said. He said something like, "Oh yeah, I have some friends in Austin. I have Will. He's on that show, Movie Bears podcast." I said, "Oh, he is he?" Yeah. I said, "Oh, well, guess what? I'm on that show too."
Yeah.
He says, "What? You are?"
Oh, that's so good. That's so good.
Awesome.
It's such a small bear world. As I was coming back from Dallas, a friend, and I'm not sure his name, but had basically said like, "Oh yeah, I know Brad and Jim, and I'm right now traveling here, and I just saw you, and hi." And so it's one of those like, it's a small bear world after all. Like all of our circles sort of intersect in kind of weird and interesting and exciting places.
Yep. It always amazes me how, truly like 1 degree of separation our community really is sometimes.
Yeah.
Or less.
But it was awesome. So I just wanted to mention Jonathan as another friend of the show that we got to meet, which was awesome.
Well, Jonathan, sorry I didn't get to meet you. Maybe next time. But glad you liked the show, and that's awesome. That was so random, Jim. That's really cool.
Yeah. And now it's going to make me very self-conscious when we talk about documentaries, knowing that we have a documentary film professor like listening to the show.
Yeah.
Hey,
not intimidating. No intimidation.
Our premise has always been we are not like super professional movie critics.
No.
We are not film studies majors. We're just 3 hairy dudes who like to watch movies and talk about what we think. So don't let that make you too nervous.
I'll try.
Well, speaking of talking about movies, we got 2 of them to discuss. Thank you again to everyone who's written into the show. We've got some other comments, guys. We may have to do another grab bag here soon.
Yes.
But if you would like to maybe send us a comment and potentially have us read it on air, you can feel free to go ahead and send those to us on Facebook. You can comment on any of our YouTube videos. You can send them to us at cast@moviebearspodcast.com, Twitter at MB Podcast, all our normal channels. You can find us. Feel free to send us a note. But Jim, Will, are we ready to break into our movie discussion for the week?
Let's open the toy chest. No, wait, hold on. Not that toy chest.
I was going to say, because that could have multiple meanings. I don't think there was a toy named Buzzy in Toy Story 4. We have a Buzz.
There is a Buzz.
There's
Not a Buzzy.
Yeah. No, different toys, different toy chests, and trust me, we're gonna make we're probably due for another. I don't know what's the over under on number of sex toy jokes this episode. Like at least 5 more.
I would say at least 5.
Yeah,
probably more like 7.
Strap in, everyone.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, this movie's been getting a lot of buzz. Wait, no, I already used Buzzy. It doesn't count. Slapping my wrist. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Toy Story 4 for probably the next 25 minutes or so. If you haven't seen Toy Story 4 yet, don't worry. We're going to wait on spoilers. As Leff mentioned in his comment earlier, we typically talk about the movie spoiler-free for like 10 minutes or so. For anyone that's kind of on the fence, maybe our opinions help you out a little bit. Feel free to hang around, listen to those thoughts. We'll give you a fair warning before we take things to spoiler town. Mm-hmm. So all those things said, here we go, our discussion of Toy Story 4. All right, Jim, do us a favor. Kick us off with a little bit of a setup of this movie's plot. And what do you think? Was this good to see in theaters? Would you wait for rental? Would you recommend skipping entirely? What's your thought process?
Yeah, let's talk about Toy Story 4. The first thing I'll do is talk about that. It's been like 9 years since we've got, the last Toy Story movie. And I don't know if there's anybody listening who's never heard of a Toy Story movie. I hope not. But I guess it's possible. But this franchise started back in like 1995 from Pixar, and huge hit. Each one of these movies is known to be a high quality animated feature, push the boundaries of CG animation. If you go back and watch like the 95 one, you'll probably see a big difference between the CG animation of that first Toy Story movie and Toy Story 4. But it's been 9 years since the last movie, Toy Story 3, which a lot of people thought, hey, Toy Story 3 was a great, wrap up of the Toy Story franchise. Seemed to end on a strong note. Let's put it that way. And then all of a sudden they announced Toy Story 4 and off we're running again. This one, I'll read the quick synopsis summary without getting, I don't think it's spoilery. When a new toy called Forky joins Woody and the gang, Woody, Buzz, and the gang, a road trip alongside old and new friends reveals how big the world can be for a toy. So yes, it's a new adventure for the gang after Toy Story 3. I don't want to give away too much about, we've seen people have probably heard about the character Forky, what he is, how he comes to be. We'll save all that for spoilers. The cast here is so fucking deep. I mean, you've of course got the return of Woody and Buzz in Tom Hanks and Tim Allen reprising their voice roles. You've got some newcomers in this one. You've got Key and Peele doing a couple of new characters in this one that brought a little bit another dimension to this movie. Christina Hendricks shows up here. I don't know if I want to give too many spoilers away in the voices. I don't know, because sometimes it's fun to in these kind of movies, sometimes listing especially some of the new voices that are brought into the series. It's kind of fun to not know who's voicing the characters and try to guess who it is. and we had a couple of those as we were watching. So I probably won't give those away, but there's a lot of the old or familiar voices come in here. I really like this movie. I think this is a really good to great kind of sequel, I guess, third sequel to the franchise. It brings the story in a different direction, brings in some different themes, humanistic themes that maybe we all can relate to, while still maintaining a pretty basic, surfacey kind of story. In this one, I think this one is a definite recommend for me. I don't know if it's going to end up like on my favorites of the year. It's tough. It's tough for these movies because there's been these movies are just all so strong. You kind of expect them to be strong, and when they are, you're like, yeah, that was a really good movie. But I don't know if it busted expectations for me. I think people were a little worried when this was announced and coming out, like, oh my God, they wrapped up the Toy Story franchise with a great third. I mean, Toy Story 3 was fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's, was a great ending. And like, oh, really? They're going to trot out Toy Story again and try to match or better that? I think we can argue whether this one's better, not as good, whatever. I still think this is a fine addition to the franchise. People are going to be happy seeing this movie. To me, it's worth going out and seeing on the big screen. And did not see. I don't even know if it's in 3D, but we did not see it in 3D. But you're going to see all your favorite characters. Well, one of the things that is tough with a movie like this is kind of an ensemble cast of actors and characters. And I don't know, you may get disappointed because you don't see your favorite character on the screen much. And we'll talk about that, how hard it is to get, to get each character meaningful screen time. And I think this movie does that to a large degree, but I'm not sure it's going to satisfy everybody for all the characters. So there you go, Toy Story 4. I think it's worth it. I want to hear what you guys have to think.
All right. A nice recommend from Jim. Real quick, Will, before we get to you, I just wanted to catch up with some stuff happening in the live chat. Big Tom, friend of the show, is watching right now. He says he's doing well because he's looking at all three of us on his big screen. So, Tom, glad to be keeping you company. Glad to have you listening. Welcome. Bobby Miller is here as well. Hey, Bobby. And James is in the chat with us. James, good to see you in the chat. Folks, feel free, as we're talking about these movies, if you want to share your thoughts, even if you're just like, I don't know if I want to see that because ABC, that's fine too. Feel free to drop those in the live chat, or if you're listening on digital tape delay, you can put those in the comments. We respond to those things as well. Will, thank you for your patience, my friend. What did you think of Toy Story 4?
Hold up a second. Can you mind pulling the string on my back? All right, rev me up and here we go. No, so Toy Story is one of those movies that, specifically Toy Story 4 is one of those movies that I didn't know that I really needed. When this was originally announced, I was one of the skeptical parties because I would say that first trilogy of movies is about as close to perfect as a trilogy can be. Like when you think about like the all-time best trilogies, there's usually an entry where when you look at it, it's like 1 and 2 are great, but 3 sort of drops off, or the middle sags, but it really picks up again in the third installment. There are very few film trilogies where every single one of the movies could be conceivably someone's like favorite best installment. And the Toy Story trilogy is one of those. So when they announced this fourth one, I was very, very, very wary. But I walked out of it very, very
Relieved and happy.
Very relieved, very basically emotionally invested with what the story gave us. Because you're right, Jim. What they did here was they took the theming and they sort of evolved it to the next level. We've grown up with these characters, whether we saw them as young adults or there's a group of kids who probably saw the first movie when they were, sort of just coming of movie age. And they learned in that first film what it's like to be a functioning member of your society, how to feel comfortable with where you're supposed to fit in. And through the course of these films, you learn the themes of what do you do when it feels like the world is starting to pass you by? How do you fit into this world? And this is especially timely because probably the people who were kids when the first movie came out and are just now adults now that the fourth one's come out are looking around at the world around us. And there's a lot of like existential dread to be had with what's happening in the world right now. And I think this movie captures what it feels like to be in that type of pressure cooker, but also how to navigate it and how to come out the other side of it different and changed, but with purpose. And I loved that. This was a movie that didn't need to be made, but once they decided to make it, they made it with purpose and they made it an integral part of the franchise to the point where now there are 4 movies out right now. I don't know if this is my favorite of them, but all 4 of them I feel are contenders. And that is a really, really good feeling to have when you have a 4-film franchise where every single one of them slaps hard. The new characters, 201, I am absolutely in love with. Like, I want to adopt all of these new characters as my babies. I want to protect them and make sure that every single one of these characters just has everything that they need, because I loved every single one of them. Even ones that in the trailers I thought, man, this character is going to get tedious, or I don't know if I'm on board with this. Once I saw them on screen, like, my heart just absolutely lit up. All the voice work is good. All the animation is breathtaking, especially when you think of how far they've come. And again, the story is so, so important and so, so good. You know, I don't know if this is like movie of the year. I don't know if this is top 10 or anything like that. You know, and I don't think it has to be for it to receive the amount of praise that we're giving it right now. This is a movie that I think everyone should see because I think you're gonna have a good time with it. I certainly did.
Right. 2 very big positives. I'm glad we got those out of the way and cleared the decks so we can go for some negative. Because,
yeah, get in on it, Brad. Get on it.
I'm joking.
Plenty to pick apart there.
You know, it's funny going into this movie. Like you guys, I felt like 3 really kind of wrapped everything up. And so when I found out they were making a 4th one, I got a little irked because I'm like, really? Like, you're just wanting to make more money, essentially what it is at this point. And I'm like, there's no more story to tell. It's all been wrapped in a pretty bow. This is cash cow milking, like, to the extreme. But I'll tell you what, as soon as we sat down in those seats and got past some of the god frickin' awful trailers we saw and the actual movie started, which no short in front of, I was a little surprised by that. Maybe we can talk about that.
Right.
It was like coming home again. And I didn't expect to feel that way. Like Woody and Buzz and the Potato Heads and the T-Rex. Like, I don't know. I felt like I reconnected with myself at like each temporal point that the previous movies came out, stemming all the way back to the first one and who I was when 2 came out. Jim, you and I had just recently gotten together when the 3rd one came out, I think. We were only together for like a year and a half or something. And now and now we've been married for a couple years at this point. So I'm kind of like, is Toy Story gonna like tell the story of my life, like provide all these touchstones? I don't know, but I will say, after seeing Toy Story 4, and I know we're going to talk about spoilers, there's this question for me as to whether or not this franchise should continue after wrapping things up with 3. And I will say, I don't know that I'm sold on more movies at this point, but you know, I would probably watch them if they came out. I'm anxious to hear what you guys think about where the story can go from here, given the way things were left. But I think the mechanisms they found for kind of giving us a new branch of this story and even setting a couple things up if they want to take it further was really clever. A lot of those feelings of cash cow milking, you know, kind of went by the wayside for me while I was watching the movie. Now reading some interviews with, you know, studio people who are like, we're so glad to hear that the movie's doing well. We've made blah, 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 blah. I'm kind of like, oh, that doesn't make me feel good inside. But I love the movie. It was great. I don't think it was my favorite of the bunch. That's okay. It doesn't have to be when you have 4 movies like that. Again, if all 4 can be really solid, parts of the franchise, and you can walk out feeling really good about it. I think that's a really big win. Jim, you mentioned some of the voices, surprises. Maybe we can reveal a couple of those in spoilers. There's one voice in particular, the voice actor for Bo Peep, who just thrilled me over the moon. I had no idea she was going to be in the movie. I spent the whole movie trying to figure out who it was. Well, the first half of the movie. And then I'm like, oh my God, Jim, I think that's Beep Beep.
Yep. You asked me, is that? And I'm like, I don't know, because I don't really see her in much, but you can talk about that.
And then, there are some other voices too, where, I would turn to look at Jim and the character's talking. And yes, Kaboom. And Jim's like scratching his head. He's like, who the fuck is Kaboom? I know that voice. And
like, I know that guy from something.
Yeah, I didn't make the connection until the very, 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 very end of the movie. But I kind of love these big, surprise voice stunt casting type things sometimes. So that was really cool to see. So yeah, for me, this is a big hearty recommend as well. I don't know if this is going to be on my top 10 list of the year. I did cry once. I think I cried at least twice in the other movies. I don't know if, that says anything, but I enjoyed it. I hope you will too.
I cried once as well. Can't share where until we get to the spoiler section, but I'm interested in seeing when we get there if it lines up.
I must be a hard ass because this one actually did not make me cry. I don't know. I know it was funny because I know where I was supposed to cry, but it didn't make me cry. So we'll talk about that when we get to spoilers.
You cold-hearted dark.
I know, right?
One thing that I think we can talk about that is a specific but not necessarily a spoiler is because it's sort of the retread of what happens at the end of the third movie is there's an opening sequence to this film that reminded me a little bit of like the opening sequence from Up, in that it basically told a story without words over a course of a couple of minutes, just sort of the story of Woody and his relationship with Andy up until he got placed in Bonnie's box at the end of 3. And it's a short little, like, if you had never seen Toy Story 1 through 3, you could watch that little short thing and sort of catch up with kind of what happened to Woody and the gang through there. But also as sort of like a look back at the franchise. I thought that was incredibly impactful, and it worked so well to like pull me into the movie and make me any doubts or worries I might have had going into it just went right out the window as soon as I saw that really well shot scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, we got a lot to talk about in spoilers, so I think this is a good time for me personally, but Jim, Will, this is all of our decision. Are we ready for spoilers? We feel like this is the time.
I am readying the spoiler tag for chat now.
Jim, are you good?
I'm ready. Okay. I'm ready. It's time for spoilers. I hope a lot of people got out to see this one and can stay with us through the spoilers. But if not, come back and give a comment as to what you thought after you saw the movie.
That would be awesome. Would love to hear those comments. So we're going to go ahead and start spoilers for Toy Story 4. If you haven't seen the film yet and you value your innocence where the film's plot is concerned, if you are watching live, feel free to step away for 15 minutes or so, then come on back for our Child's Play review. If you're listening through the magic of digital tape delay through iTunes or Spotify, I don't know why I sang that like it was a fanfare, but I guess that's the thing I do now. Feel free to skip ahead using the time index in those handy-dandy show notes. Jim wonderfully and masterfully and
handcrafts
every single week.
That's right.
Jim, I know. Ooh, Jim, thanks for putting those together so people can navigate around. I know they're helpful.
My pleasure.
All right, here we go. Spoilers for Toy Story 4. We're done awkwardly filling the space, so you have time to get away. Where do we want to start, guys?
There's I think two things that we can talk about. Well, there's a lot of we can talk about in spoilers, but there's two sort of like new elements that are most interesting to me, and that's the Forky stuff and the Gabby stuff. So those are the two places I'd like to go. And
let's go.
So, first of all, Forky is an interesting addition to this franchise, voiced by Tony Hale. Bonnie is a very different kid than Andy used to be. Andy was I guess a more traditional, like, pick up your toys and play with them type kid. But Bonnie expresses herself in some kind of more creative ways, and when struggling at school, she decides to make herself a friend out of some trash that Woody helps materialize in front of her. And thus is born Forky when she writes her name on the little popsicle stick legs. And I think Forky is really interesting because his story arc is almost a little bit akin to like what Buzz went through. If you think about in the first movie, a character who thinks that his purpose is one thing, but realizes how important it is for him to kind of step into his role as it's supposed to be. Like he's supposed to be the toy for Bonnie. He's supposed to make her feel good. And I loved his inclusion there because this is the film where Woody realizes that that world has kind of passed him by. And so being able to see that mirror image of what he already went through with Buzz, but now with Forky, as Woody's making his own decisions, not only is Forky a fun character, but I think it made the stuff that Woody went through all the more poignant. Also, Forky was funny. Forky was super funny. All of his like, I'm trash stuff feels like the perfect reflection of what it's like to be a functioning adult in 2019 and trying to make sense of everything. So yeah, Forky for life.
Yeah, I like the Forky character after a while. I mean, I wish they had actually leaned into his character traits a little bit more. But instead, for part of the movie, he ends up being like more of a MacGuffin, you know what I mean, to drive the plot. Like, oh, he's lost, we got to go find, you know what I mean? Like, and I just wish they had kind of leaned into that. And it's because it started out like very interesting. Like, oh, this guy's like, he just wants to keep just throwing himself outside of everything. Because he thinks his purpose is already done and he can throw himself away. And that's kind of if you think about that, that's a pretty heady topic, you know what I mean? And I know these movies want to kind of walk the line between a kid's movie and an adult's movie. So I get it, but that was a pretty heady concept to introduce into the movie. And it left me wishing that they had explored it a little bit more.
I completely agree with you. And I'll this is probably a weird comparison to make, but like I'm watching Woody and I'm watching Forky and I start getting like a Star is Born vibes a little bit, like the outgoing, favored, beloved toy, the incoming, more loved toy, going through life together and helping each other out and maybe finding each other in the middle. Not that it was going to be a love story or anything, but I love this idea of seeing these two arcs like kind of coming together.
I don't want to spoil the end of A Star is Born, but I'm just picturing kind of like the final moment, but with Woody and the
string out of his back.
Yeah. And now I want that movie, A Toy is Born.
So you wanted Forky to kind of fulfill his destiny, which you know what I mean? Like his purpose and destiny. I mean, that would have been a pretty dark. I
don't mean it has to like end like A Star is Born, but I mean like just in terms of like, Forky kind of realizing his purpose, right, as a toy and his place in Bonnie's pantheon of toys and what he can do for her, but also helping Woody. Ultimately this happens anyway, but I think we could have had less, oh my God, Forky's gone again, like hijinks capers for happening 5 times in a row. We could have maybe taken 1 or 2 of those out, extended some of those character beats. I would have loved to see more of Forky and Woody just on the road together, sort of like Fox and hounding it up. Another sad ending. What is it with me in these sad movies? I don't know.
I would watch a road trip movie between the two, but I did like what we got out of Forky because I think that it's neat to see a character who thinks that his purpose is trash find that he has a purpose that's built on love and support. Like, I think there's something to be said for that. Again, like from a very millennial perspective, like it is very, very hard to like just sort of like look out the window and think about like, shit, everything's going to hell right now. It feels like every day is kind of worse than the last, but knowing that you find support in like the people that care about you and the people who draw strength from you, like that feels like the type of message that I can't get enough of.
I don't think you have to be a millennial to necessarily feel that and benefit from that message. I think lots of people feel that, whether they're 25 or
you don't have to be a millennial
right now.
It's not unique, but I think that the kind of the very specifically like the feeling lost with kind of everything that's going on. Like it is something that is very like a young 20 somethings are feeling more and more like, okay, now what? Like we've inherited all this and what do we do? And not to say that, the rest of us don't as well, but I think about the audience that grew up with this film, and I think about them very specifically, the ones who were probably, 8 years old when this movie first came out or when Toy Story 1 came out and have grown with it. And I think about them as like my ideal audience.
Yeah.
Well, because you are seeing that generational thing a little bit in the movie, right? So you think of Forky and, maybe some of the other characters like Bunny and Ducky or whatever as kind of the new generation of toys in the movie.
The new guard, yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to some of the old ones. And I wanted to talk about that too, Brad. I didn't mean to cut you off, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think one of the cool things for me when we saw this movie were the parents and the grandparents who took their kids and grandchildren to see this, because as much as like, you're right, Will, I think the millennials, can folks in that age group can definitely identify. I think parents and grandparents also start to feel that like, gosh, am I necessary anymore to my children who are now grown, or my grandkids who I very rarely get to see. I love that this movie, I think, has something for everybody in that respect. And that's what I meant by like, the two like Star is Born arcs. You have the upcoming rising star and maybe the outgoing fading star, and what happens when they meet in the middle. So,
yeah.
I wanted to talk about, unfortunately, I mean, some of the toys get a little sidelined in this movie, and I think that's probably the one thing I wish was better. But you can't. It's this gets back to the point I was making before. It's hard in an ensemble piece to give each character their due, and some of the older characters really just get kind of a background name check, basically, for most of the story. So, yeah, if you have one of the characters, from the first couple of movies that you want to see more of, you may not get that in this one. But you certainly get plenty from Woody, the main character. Buzz, you get more from Buzz. We get Bo Peep, which was pretty awesome character.
And we can reveal that voice actress now, Annie Potts of Designing Women, Ghostbusters, and Young Sheldon fame, voices Bo Peep. She does a fucking awesome job at it too.
I really like that character. She's kind of the I don't know what you call this kind of character in a story. She's kind of the clear, she sees everything for what it is. She's the wizened, voice of experience, I guess, because she's been out in the world and she's seen what happens out there. And I really dug her character a lot in this movie. And I also like the new Gabby character.
Yes.
I love it because this movie easily could have gone the way of, okay, we have this character, looks like she's going to be evil. She's setting herself up to be this, totally evil mustache twirling villain, but she's complex, right? She's got, she ends up with her own little arc in the movie. And I love that about this movie, how they didn't, they subverted my expectations for that character. Totally.
And they subverted them not once, but twice, right?
Yeah, right.
Initially they Jon Snow her in a way, like, she gets the box from Woody. She finds her little girl. She gets her attention. I don't want it, the girl says. And Gabby, sorry, you're by yourself. Then you think, all right, well, she's going to go join the other toys. She's going to be a friend for Bonnie. This is where this movie was heading the whole time. And you're rolling your eyes like, you subverted our expectations just to set this up, really. But then it turns out she meets this random boy or girl. I don't think we actually know.
Right. And I thought that was an opportunity the movie had or didn't have. I was like, oh, that little lost kid, could have been a boy or a girl, or, it wasn't clear that what that gender was. And it doesn't have to be clear, but I think the way the movie handled it, typically older movies would be like, oh, it's got to be a girl because he or she is attracted to dolls, right? So it must be a girl, but not necessarily, right? I mean, we certainly know better than that, and I think the movie knows better than that. Although it had to walk that line a little bit. You don't want parents running and screaming, "Oh my God, look what Toy Story 4 did."
I would say that, like, I kind of see it a little bit differently. I think that it's actually stronger that you put a fairly androgynous
Child.
sort of, I don't know exactly what this character is, but you can see them as coded as like gender fluid or non-binary. And you don't have to have a character come out and say like you are neither boy nor girl, but having a character that sort of like, I think that's incredibly strong, because I think the natural inclination would have been for a lot of Disney Pixar's history to put a little girl in a dress, like probably even hyper feminize her. Or if you were going to do the opposite, make like I'm a rough and tumble boy, but also I like girls, and I or like dolls too. I like this a lot, and I loved Gabby. I think about the villains of the 4 movies, and I think that Gabby is probably my favorite because I think Gabby was probably the most complex. And this is after a series of really complex villains. Sid from the first movie was not complex, but he was fun and memorable. That's the human boy that was torturing the dolls. And you had and I forget the name, but like the prospector collector doll into Lotsa Bear was amazing in 3, but he was probably the most villainous of the villainous toys. But Gabby here is dark and does some really bad, fucked up things. But once you realize her motivations, you get where her hurt comes from. And when you see the hurt that she experiences after being rejected, after that voice box scene, Brad, and then after she finds her purpose with the new child at the carnival, like when I say that there was a moment in the movie that made me cry, there's this exact moment where the kid looks over and sees Gabby and says something to the effect of, "Are you lost too? I'll take care of you." And you know that in that moment, and I'm tearing up just thinking about this, that this kid was like going through hell, and being able to project onto that doll, like gave them the strength to go find help. Like that broke me in the best way possible.
I think there's a lot to be read in this
very
scene.
Powerful moment.
Yeah. I think there's a lot. I'm sorry. There's a lot to be read into that scene. If you want to read it, you know what I mean? Just the fact that the kid, would say he's lost. He's obviously lost because he's separated from the parents at the fair or whatever. But there could be other layers of lost, for kids. Maybe they're not feeling connected to their parents or whatever. I had just seen a movie about foster kids, you know what I mean? And it could be that kind of situation. But I really like that scene. Didn't make me tear up. The other scene that probably made people tear up was the goodbye, right? Of Woody saying goodbye to Buzz and the rest of the gang. We've seen this scene before in other movies as well, not necessarily with these characters, but I think you kind of could see that coming, and that maybe that's why I was braced for it, and didn't really hit me as hard as in some other movies. But is that the one you guys were thinking of?
No, the one that made us cry was the kid getting Gabby
lost and getting Gabby. Yeah. But Jim, to your point, I heard sniffles during that goodbye scene, and I think it certainly was emotional for some people. But Jim, I think you're right. Like this whole arc for Woody, and I know we have a whole nother movie to talk about, but this whole arc for Woody has kind of been like his fading star, right? Like he's a cowboy toy in a day and age where, like, I can't even tell you the last time I saw a cowboy toy in a toy aisle, like walking through Walmart or, Toys R Us, which I'm dating myself, I guess. I don't go to toy aisles that often anymore. I don't know how popular cowboy toys are right now. And I don't know how popular they are with girls. We saw Bonnie at one point with the female cowgirl character. She took Woody's badge and put it on her chest, and she was like, "All right, Sheriff." Da 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 da. And so, I think Woody's kind of fading out here, and I'm actually interested to see like what could happen with Woody and the other lost toys. Bo Peep. Like, are they going to get a spinoff movie all of their own? I
Is
don't
there
know.
going to be a reunion movie at some point?
I think that would cheapen it for me.
Yeah, maybe, but
So, first of all, I think the farewell I liked a lot because it didn't make me cry because they didn't actually play it. For me, at least, they didn't play it for tears. I think there's a moment where all the other toys figure out what Woody's decided to do, and they all jump around him and start cheering. And I think for me, it was less about like this sad farewell and more just like, it's wonderfully supportive to be able to say to someone like, yeah, this is the next thing that you need to go. You're moving away. You're getting that new job. You're taking that new step in life. And it sucks that you're not going to be as prominent in my life anymore, but this is the right step for you. And so that's what I saw in that scene. And so that was actually a very joyous moment for me, like watching Woody sort of like realize and have the strength and the support to go off and do what he wanted to do. And to your point, to your question, do I want to see another one of these? I don't know. Like, I'm in the same boat I am at the end of 3. This was the perfect capstone to this story. I don't need to see any more story because they ended it on the perfect note. But I said the same thing at the end of Toy Story 3, and this movie had a strong effect on me too. So I'm going to say this. If and only if Toy Story 5, Toy Story 6, Toy Story 89 can be made with the exact same amount of poignance and relevance and love and care and quality that these first 4 are, I will keep coming back as long as they keep making them. But as soon as they lose that magic, they need to scrap the script, stop production, and leave it where it's at. That's my thought.
Can we just get a Toy Story like 84 with like He-Man and She-Ra and G.I. Joe, like all the toys of that year? Like, can it be Andy's dad or something?
I'm surprised they haven't made, and they probably have. I'll look on Brazzers later. But I'm surprised they haven't made Toy Story 69 where like a girl like gets her vibrator and writes like her name on the bottom of it, and it's like, comes to life. I'm surprised. When we're talking about all these Toy Stories, that's going to be not Toy Story 5, not Toy Story 6, but Toy Story 69. Watch for it.
Bonnie has just turned 21 and gets the gift of a lifetime.
So stop the franchise before that happens, is I guess what I'm saying.
Gabby gets her voice, and how?
Oh, God.
Oh, man, these puns are child's play to with, but
yeah.
Well, before we end it, a comment from James. He said, and I think he's talking about the scene. I think he's talking about the Woody goodbye scene. He said, that was sad for me because it's so relatable, losing friends to an extent where you don't get to spend as much time with them. And speaking of that, I actually heard people around me like saying like, at the end when they're separated, like, Woody has been kind of the heart of these movies, right? Through 4 of these movies. And now he's pulling himself away. Well, is he pulling himself away from the rest of the toys and the Toy Story? Or is he going to become now, if they do another movie, still going to be the heart of the next movie? So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. And I know people felt that. People felt that as Woody's gone away, there's now no more Toy Story. So I don't think that's true necessarily, but I think that's that message is there for people who, to see.
Here's how it's going to go. We're going to get another movie about Bonnie and her toys. It's going to be heartfelt. It's going to be wonderful. And then in the movie after that, all of the toys are about to die, not in a trash compactor this time, but maybe some other terrible, terrible way. And all of a sudden there's all this blinding white light and there's a toy there, robed, all in white. All we can see is its eyes. And then he flings the robe away. It's Woody. He saves the toys, but then he disappears as quickly as he was there.
In a cloud of dust.
So I think that what you do, though, is if you're going to do this new trilogy of Toy Story movies, you do them about 10 years, 15 years after the last trilogy, and you make it to where the fans either absolutely love them or absolutely hate them. They'll be divisive as fuck. That's the next Toy Story movie.
That's a great way to do it. Like when Mr. Potato Head gets in a Power Wheels and like zooms it as fast as it can go through like another type of car, it'll be great. It'll be awesome.
Oh boy.
All right, listen, we got another movie to talk about. We got to move on. Sorry, Toy Story 4. We love you. Heart symbol to prove it. But Jim, Will, Child's Play, we're either going to give up on it and keep talking Toy Story 4, or
Yeah, no, we got to do Child's Play.
Yeah. Let's let the toys rest for however long it is. And
all right. So here's the deal. This is how this is going to work because we're running out of time. We're going to go ahead and make the transition to Toy Story. We're going to spend probably 5 or 6 minutes just talking very quick, non-spoilers. Is it worth seeing or not from our perspective? Did we like it or not? And then we'll give you a fair warning before we go to spoilers for probably 15 minutes or so. So get ready, hunker down for the ride. Here we go. Our discussion of Child's Play. All right, Will, I know you were a big fan of the Child's Play franchise when we were children and becoming adults. I was a big fan too, but I'm really curious to know. I've been wondering all fucking weekend what you thought of this film. So if you would start us out, that would be grand. Just give us the basic setup. Was this worth seeing in theaters, waiting for rental, skipping? What'd you think?
Yeah, so we have this franchise from the late 80s all the way through today, the Child's Play movies by writer Don Mancini, who's been with the story since its inception, about this murderous doll named Chucky. And it's gone from serious to campy to complete wackadoodle. And it's built not just a mainstream following, but also a cult following in the process. So that brings us to the 2019 remake of the film, which reimagines the same toy, this time with a different voice actor, and this time with a different, believe it or not, Andy. We're going to be using this name to death this episode. What we end up with is Aubrey Plaza is playing this mother. She's like she works at like a department store type place, and she has this 13-year-old boy who is having problems fitting in. And for his birthday, or in advance of his birthday, she gets him the new Buddy doll, which they named Chucky. And this is unlike the magical inspiration that causes the doll to become murderous in the main franchise. This one is based on a learning AI that learns behaviors and probably learns some behaviors that it shouldn't learn through the process. What this means is you get a film that's incredibly technophobic. And I love technophobic thrillers when done right. Like I think about Chopping Mall from the 80s, the robots trapped in the mall. It's dumb and it's fun. I think about Upgrade from just a few years ago, which had like a similar like be wary of technology, bone crunching action. Child's Play really, really, really wants to be this type of movie, and it kind of almost works when it's exploring those themes. But the problem is it keeps weighing itself down with the Chucky stuff. And the Chucky stuff does not work with the technophobic thriller stuff. The doll design doesn't work. It's fucking creepy. And that's okay for a horror doll. But you think about the 80s franchise, and you've got what looks like this super cute, adorable doll that then turns murderous. No, this doll in this movie is murderous and creepy. Like its face just looks like it's gonna fucking murder you from the get-go. Who would buy this? And who would buy, like, I don't even buy like the whole, like, who would buy like a weird stuffed doll to be their basically equivalent of like Siri or whatever it is? I think there are some things where there is if you take Chucky out of this and replace it with some sort of other automated AI that learns things,
a Roomba,
and gets a Roomba, whatever, and becomes super protective and gets super murdery as a result, I think you get a strong, strong movie. But the Chucky stuff does not work here. This movie doesn't know what it wants to be. The main line of Chucky movies knows how silly the premise is and veers into that silliness and makes this wacky lore that doesn't always work, but always works. Even when it doesn't, I guess. Like, it always just bats for a fucking 1,000 and goes for it. This movie doesn't know what it wants to be. It wants to be taken seriously. It also wants to be a Child's Play movie, and it can't be both things. So honestly, I did not like this. This was not a win for me. Unsubscribe. Delete this from my inbox. Fucking Siri, get this out of my cart. I don't want this movie.
Man, well, I know we're both big fans of the original franchise, and so for me going into this movie, I had to kind of like check myself a little bit. Like, okay, yes, all these other movies came before. I really love the first few of them. I got to try and divest myself, right, of that baggage, and try and judge this reboot on its own. But I got to tell you, for reasons that you just mentioned, even with the old stuff set aside, you're right, it doesn't work. First of all, the doll design. You're right about it being creepy, and creepy is good in a horror movie. But the whole thing is, these are supposed to be dolls that people want to buy and bring into their homes, right?
Yes,
And each and every one of them looks like, I don't know,
Ugly
like,
as fuck.
yeah, like cerebral palsy victims
Oh,
that
yeah.
want to murder you and like have their, faces half melted or something. Like, nothing against anyone who has cerebral palsy. I just mean, like, if you're designing a doll, usually, like, if you want people to buy it, right, it's not going to look like this half melted creepy motherfucking thing. So we see these scenes, right, where like Tim Matheson is like talking about like, oh, Caslin dolls are so great, everybody is going to have one. And you see these lines of dolls and you're like, nobody would want one of these dolls ever. Plus they're being sold at a Kmart like store, right? It seems like it's kind of a low budget store, but they're selling these high-end dolls that can control all the Caslin products in your home. And
essentially the Apple
Right?
store is inside of like the back of the Kmart.
right, I was like, that doesn't even make sense. But like, then the other thing is like, oh, you're going to let the doll control your vacuum, control your TV with its little glowy ET finger. And like, it can like capture recording through its eyes. You can watch it back on your phone. Like, are kids going to be sending these dolls to watch their parents fuck and then watch it on their phone? Like, really? You build that functionality into a doll? So my thing is, I have a huge problem with the tech aspect of this as well. Taking the supernatural element out of it, okay, whatever. But I think the way they tried to make this work and subvert expectations just didn't really work here. I will say one thing, though, a big positive in this movie for me. I did like Mark Hamill voicing Chucky.
Yes.
I liked him best when he sung the full song at the end of the movie in the credits, because I feel like that's when he really got to ham it up. But I think we have to be careful with Mark Hamill because I was hearing a lot of the Joker starting to creep in. And I could tell, I think he was trying to rein it back, right? So double-edged sword, I guess. But Mark Hamill, I love and adore you. Thank you. Jim, what did you think of Child's Play?
Oh, I didn't like it at all. Several factors. First of all, you guys talked about the tech aspect not working for you. Same thing here. I'm like, movies now want to be kind of relevant to today, and so they lean into this like technology gone wrong stuff. If you want to watch that shit and see it done right, watch Black Mirror. Right, watch an episode of Black Mirror and see how tech can go wrong. And those are 1 hour fucking TV shows that have done it 10 times better than this movie. I just thought that aspect of it was sloppy. I mean, if they wanted to remake a Chucky movie or a Child's Play movie, get rid of that tech aspect bullshit. Yeah, maybe you could have it creep in later, like a hidden, feature that it somehow tied into existing technology and started to control things like with an evil bent. Great, but you're right. Who's gonna buy this fucking thing to like control their lives and turn their lights on and shit? Nobody. You talked about the doll design. It was kind of terrible. The whole movie, I'm looking at this thing. It didn't scare me. It didn't freak me out. It was just like the fucking thing is like ugly. Like it just doesn't. I don't know. There'd almost be better if they made it like a super cute face. You know what I mean? And have it be evil, because that dichotomy would at least create some tension. And then, I'm not a huge, I've seen a lot, Brad, thanks to Brad, who's shown me several of the Child's Play movies. I kind of dig them. I mean, that they have their own thing going, and it's a pretty cool little universe that they built around this Chucky thing. And they're trying to reboot it here, but it just doesn't have that magic. I'm not a big enough fan that this movie would scratch any itch of mine, nostalgia wise, or any other way. Sorry, but I didn't like the lead actor in this one, the kid, Andy. I just didn't. None of the kid actors were very good. They were very annoying to me. And I know they're trying and they're doing what they can, but it just came across like, casting call. You win the casting call, so you get the thing. There was just didn't seem to be any organic like chemistry going on with these characters. Nothing about this movie. I cannot recommend it really to anybody other than people who have a curiosity about the series and want to see how it's being rebooted. And even then, I would say wait for this thing to be released on VOD, because I think you're going to see it pretty damn soon.
I got to tell you, for a kid who's related to Jason Bateman, his acting wasn't that great, unfortunately.
Is he really related? I know the name was the same.
He is. Yeah, it's his brother. So he's the youngest of the 8 Bateman kids.
Oh my God, that's a huge age range.
Yeah,
because Jason Bateman is like almost my age, probably at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we hit on the doll design and why it's so bad. Like, I think there was a moment in the first movie where probably the first half of the movie, you don't really know if the doll is actually murderous, because it's just this inanimate little doll that's just being like, that looks kind of adorable, all things considered. It looked exactly like the My Buddy toys of the era. And so when it then did its like scrunch face, like, now it's in murder mode, it's a shock, and it sort of creates this sort of like escalating tension for the second half of the film. When you make the monster design look uncomfortable from the beginning, and it doesn't have anywhere to go. Like, Chucky never really gets any creepier through this movie. Like, his eyes start to glow red, but like, I mean, whatever, that doesn't scare me any more than like, because I'm already weirded out by just like this doll that's going to give me nightmares when it probably shouldn't.
Here's a question.
Go ahead.
Here's a question. Would Chucky have been way more creepy and scary, Will, this is for you, if he didn't actually talk? He just learned and acted upon outside stimulus without being able to talk.
I think it's hard. I think that at that point, I think it kind of goes back to kind of the original point that I was making. Like, I think at that point, it's no longer a Child's Play movie, because part of what Chucky does so well is quip. And I think that they tried to get those quips in here. I think it would have worked better if we had something more like, Jim, you mentioned Black Mirror. I'm thinking about the Ashley O episode from this last season.
Ooh,
and I'm
no,
not...
No. Sorry, we're only one episode
No
in.
spoil, but that's okay. You can talk about it.
There is a little robot in that is about this big, that looks more like something that you would get from like an an iPod, like from an Apple type product. If the design looks closer to something like that, or like more of like imagine like this little cylindrical white thing, or maybe this little sleek thing that kind of lights up and grows, and maybe it then gets sentience by at some point realizing like it's just sitting on a shelf, so it then possesses this eye-enabled like doll, like James says in chat, like a Furby. Maybe that's how you get your Chucky thing in here. Instead of it coming out of the box as this like creepy murder doll, maybe you still want to do your technophobic thing. You start with something like an Alexa that realizes that it can't protect Andy and it can't murder things unless it gets arms and legs. And the only way it can do that is, oh, hey, that doll over there has a chip in it. Maybe I can use that as my body. Like, so I think that if you're still, as the writers of this, married to the idea of, we want this to be Black Mirror, but we also want this to be Child's Play, I think you can still do it. I don't think this was it. I don't think this was the best version of that. I hate to do the whole like rewrite a movie, because that's not in the spirit of like film review and criticism. Sure. But I do feel that the thing that I just pitched right there is a 10 times stronger like base plot than what we got in this movie.
I was just trying to do a quick Google search to see if I could figure out the name of this thing we saw. But Jim, like, I don't know, 5 years ago, you showed me this like short movie about a robot that looks super cute. And anytime you ask it to do something, it's like, no problem. But the robot like eventually turns fucking evil and like murders everybody and its eyes go red.
Yeah.
But like, Will, as you were talking about that premise, like, it's pretty much that movie. And I was thinking, oh my God, that like 12-minute short robot movie that I can't remember the name of was like so much better than this Chucky movie. They were essentially the same thing. you know.
Right.
Yeah, I wish it could have been that and not what we got.
Yeah. What did you guys think of we got a Chucky bear in this one?
Oh,
Remember
that was creepy as fuck.
the bear face Chucky's? Like,
Right.
I'm like, oh my God, that thing is ridiculous. It
And
it didn't even look like a bear. It looked like,
No.
do you remember, you may have seen these on like at the supermarket checkout line. There were these kids that were born with this condition where like hair grows all over their body, and I don't know if you remember seeing any pictures of that, but like that bear looked exactly like those poor kids did, like growing up, and I'm like, that is kind of creepy. I'm like, do you remember that?
Yeah, it reminded me when I was a kid, one of the toys in the He-Man line was Moss Man, heroic master of moss and trees, and he was flocked. His whole body was covered in like fake, like hair, the same thing. And he used to get compared to that look too, Jim. So when I saw that bear, like that was all I could think about was like 80s flocking /
Yeah.
Can we talk for a minute about like the weird like alternate world that this movie exists in, where iteration 1 is a long-haired redheaded doll, and then the second iteration is a short-haired blonde boy and a bear. But at what point in, what is this, like approximate or near future or something like that, like none of them was female? Like that seems really, really weird that they wouldn't have like
Yeah.
and I'm not
doll, right?
and I'm not saying from like an equality perspective. I'm saying from a like a company in 2019 creating a full line of like home assistant like doll type things like that, and like not having like a female one, like would get absolutely fucking roasted. And that didn't happen in this world. So it's like one of those things where you keep seeing little things here in this movie where it's like the premise they set up, granted, it's about a murder doll, whatever, but at the same time, it's not a good thing about a murder doll. Like any of the, I literally would choose any of the other Child's Play movies over this one, even the ones that are super fucking wackadoodle with now there's a bride and now he's like impregnated that other doll and now there's like a little murderous baby doll. Like all of those movies are very confident in what they want to be, and that's something I cannot say about this film. So give me those movies any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, in summary, for me, it wasn't scary at all. Like for a so-called horror movie, I wasn't scared in any of this movie whatsoever. There were some gross out things that really didn't gross me out that much, and it wasn't that funny. When it tried to push the comedy and the the snarkiness of the character, the quippiness, it just wasn't funny, and it just didn't have any of that, and so nothing to really hook me in. Consequently, it just fell really flat.
Yeah, unfortunate. Guys, we have a little bit of time left. Did we want to do a spoiler section, or do we feel like we can kind of leave it there?
I don't think there's much to spoil here. Like there's some plot beats that we could spoil. I don't care to personally. I think we've talked about the doll. If we want to talk about the acting, I think we did a little bit of that. Aubrey Plaza, I love her. She wasn't good in this. She's very misused. Every actor in this, I don't necessarily, it's hard for me to blame the actors. Everyone felt like they were underperforming, and when that happens, I think that usually means there's something else happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with Will. I don't think we need to spoil anything. It's a fucking Chucky movie. You know what happens? The doll gets murderous. People get killed, and at the end, I don't know. This is not much. You're pretty much back to where you started.
And not to be dismissive of Chucky, again, like the newer movies are bad in places, and sometimes you could even say like the whole things are bad, but not for lack of ambition. There are some things that like when they swing hard for like a crazy spoiler or a crazy twist type moment, they do that. I don't know what that moment would be in this movie. Everything feels super well set up, and the things that you're expecting to happen do happen. The things that are foreshadowed happen exactly as you see them. So there's just no like joy of discovery in this film.
Indeed. Yep.
All right. Well, I think that about wraps us up then on our conversation for Child's Play. Unfortunately, it wasn't as good as we maybe hoped or thought it might be, but them's the ropes.
I don't think you're going to see it on my year-end list.
Yeah, it's
Well-
not going to be on either of my year-end lists. I have seen some worse movies this year, but I've seen a lot of better movies.
Yeah. Well, guys, we're going to figure out what we're doing for next week. We'll get that all sorted. But between now and our next show, if our listeners want to reach out and continue talking movies with you, Jim, where can folks find you online?
Find me on Twitter at JJP Out West. That's all one word. That's my Twitter handle where I talk about movies and maybe some other stuff, but mostly movies. And find me on Facebook under my name, Jim Pugliafico.
All right. And Will, how about for you?
Yeah, you can look for me on Twitter. I'm at Whatever Cove. I'm on Facebook. Just look for William Lindis. Send me a note first, just so I know how you found me. Yeah, check me out on Letterboxd as well. Letterboxd.com. It's a site where you can review and list and rank films. I do a lot of that on there as well. So add me as a friend. I'd love to see the movies that are interesting you.
All right. Awesome. And you can find me online. Look for me on Facebook, Brad Harris. I'm the one who likely has some friends in common with you already. Please don't befriend the one that literally has a picture of himself posing with a gun. That ain't me. Or you can find me on Twitter at iBradPro. Would love to chat movies with you. Feel free to reach out and say hello. Folks, it's been great being back in the saddle this week after our bye week last week. Just want to thank everyone who was hanging out with us in the live chat tonight. James, Bobby, Tom, great having you folks with us. And for those of you who continue to tune into the show week after week, year after year, we heart and adore you so much. And again, if you want to send us a comment, feel free to shoot that to us at cast@moviebearspodcast.com or hit us up on Facebook or YouTube. Folks, we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Happy Pride.